I remember the exact moment things stopped making sense. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even dramatic. It was just quiet. Too quiet for a Thursday. I got off work earlier than usual because the plant had a systems fault, something about pressure valves, nothing important. I didn't tell Brittany I was coming home. Why would I? It used to be a nice surprise. The drive back was quick. The streets were damp, not from rain, but from the city's strange habit of hosing things down before dawn. I pulled up and saw a motorcycle in my driveway. Not parked neatly either, just dumped diagonally like someone didn't care how long they'd be staying. That should have been enough. That should have been the first red flag, but I gave it a benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe someone broke down and Brittany was helping. I walked in and everything was off. The way the lights were too dim, the music I didn't recognize playing from the living room speaker, and that strange undertone of laughter, not the kind that includes you, the kind that pretends you don't exist. I stood there, keys in my hand, listening. One pair of voices, then two. One hers, one man's. The second I heard that low, easy chuckle, I knew. Not from doubt, from certainty. There's something unmistakable about hearing your partner laugh like they've got a secret you were never supposed to discover. I didn't say anything at first. I just stepped through the hall, past the framed photos we hadn't updated in 3 years, past the jacket I knew wasn't mine hanging on the coat rack. The bottle of bourbon opened. Not mine either, the good one I was saving. The one Brittany always called too expensive to waste on guests. And then there they were. The scene was absurd. He was sitting back like he owned the place, his boots up on my table, half-empty glass in his hand, while Brittany stood over him, spinning the neck of the bourbon bottle like it was a toy. She wasn't startled. She didn't even flinch. She looked at me like I was the one who walked into the wrong house. "Oh," she said, dry as sand. "You're home." She didn't even attempt to hide him. She didn't grab a robe, didn't reach for an excuse. Just stood there, her hand still on the bottle, like we were in a completely different universe where I wasn't supposed to exist at all. The biker gave me a lazy look. Not smug, not challenging, worse. Dismissive, like I wasn't worth reacting to. "I forgot you had a key," she added, as if I'd broken into my own house. There's a strange moment that happens when betrayal stops being emotional and turns clinical. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was cataloging, watching the way her eyes shifted. Not in panic, but in preparation. Measuring her next line. That was when it hit me. She wasn't sorry. Not because she wasn't caught. Because she never planned to hide. "Who is he?" I asked. She shrugged. "Does it matter?" I looked at her. Really looked. She had on that blouse I got her 2 Christmases ago. The one she said was too much to wear around family. Now here she was, flaunting it like a cheap stage costume in front of someone who hadn't earned a second of her life. "You've got 2 minutes," I said quietly, "to tell me everything before I stop listening." Her eyes narrowed, that slow tightening women get when they know you've taken the upper hand, even if just for a second. "He's a friend," she said. "He's drinking my bourbon." She laughed. "You never drink it. I figured you wouldn't miss it." That wasn't just disrespect. That was a scalpel. She knew exactly where to cut. The things I'd been lenient about, the things I let slide in the name of love, she turned into weapons. And he just sat there, watching, enjoying the fallout like it was theater. I walked over and took the glass from the biker's hand. Didn't ask. Didn't look at him. I poured it out slowly onto the floor, the liquid soaking into the rug we bought together on a trip to Charleston. Then I put the glass down and looked her dead in the eyes. "This is how it's going to go," I said. "You're going to get him out of here. Now. And then we're going to talk like adults. Or we're not going to talk at all. And I'll let my lawyer do the rest." That was when she snapped. The calm shattered. "You don't get to dictate anything, Jason. You checked out years ago. You think showing up with your stupid factory hands and tired stories means something?" I needed more. He gave me more. I nodded slowly. That was it. The confession. Not of guilt. Of intent. And still, she didn't ask me to stay. Not once. I turned and left the room, went to the garage, not for space, not for peace, but because I needed to remind myself who I was. Not a man betrayed. A man preparing for something else. The garage was cold, lit only by a single overhead bulb that buzzed like it had a secret. I stood there for a moment, not touching anything, just listening to the quiet that lived behind the walls. It was a different kind of silence than the one in the house. Not empty, focused. Out there, away from her, away from that man still lounging like a king on my couch, I could think. Every tool on the wall had its place. My hands knew each one by weight, by purpose. In that small world of screws and steel, things made sense. You measure, you cut, you build. No lies, no guessing games.
No bourbon thieves.
I didn't go back inside for 20 minutes. I wanted to see if she'd handle it herself. I wanted to know if she still had enough respect for me, for the house, to clean up what she'd spilled across our lives. She didn't. When I returned, he was still there, still sitting, still smirking, and she was on the phone, not whispering, talking like she wanted me to hear. Yes, I know. He's being ridiculous, she said into the receiver. No, I'm not leaving. Let him throw his little tantrum. I stepped into the frame of the living room and said nothing. She saw me and didn't blink, just hung up. Well? She said, arms crossed, chin raised. You're really not going to ask him to leave? I asked. Why should I? He's more of a man than you've been in years. That line didn't hurt like it should have. It was rehearsed, polished like she'd said it before. Maybe not to me, maybe to herself in front of a mirror, testing it out for weight. Like she needed to believe it more than she needed it to be true. All right, I said calmly. Then you both leave. The biker stood up then, stretching, walking toward me slowly. I could smell the smoke on him, even though there were no cigarettes. The smell of someone who doesn't care what anything costs. You sure you want to push this, man? He said. I looked at him, really looked. His hands were cracked, his jacket worn down to the stitching, his boots not even laced. He was just chaos in human form, and she chose that over a man who once worked double shifts to pay off her mother's surgery. I'm not pushing anything, I said. You're trespassing. And she's about to find out what real consequences look like. Brittany rolled her eyes. You don't have the guts. I smiled. That was the moment I realized something. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't the betrayal. It was that she had rewritten who I was in her head, turned me into a non-threat, a background character in her drama. I stepped aside and pointed to the door. You have 5 minutes, I said. Both of you. He looked at her. She looked at him. And for a flicker of a second, she hesitated. She thought he might stand up for her, defend her, but he didn't. He just walked past me with a snort, muttered something under his breath about married chicks being drama, and slammed the door on his way out. That's when it got quiet again. She stood there, alone now, trying to decide how to pivot. Her hands went to her hair, adjusting it like the moment could be reset, like it was all some bad script. I didn't mean for you to find out like that, she said. I don't care how I found out. I care that you stopped pretending to care. She opened her mouth, then closed it. And for the first time that night, she didn't have a line ready. I sat down. Not because I wanted to talk. Because I wanted to give her one last chance. One final opportunity to salvage a shred of truth. And that's when she said it. You think this is all on me? You think you didn't have a hand in any of this? My laugh was short, dry. Not because she was wrong, but because the depth of her deflection was Olympic. I gave you 100 chances to say something. Anything. Instead, you let it rot. I was alone, she said, eyes wide, playing the victim now. You were always working, always tired. I needed someone. And instead of talking to me, I said, voice steady. You brought a stranger into our house, into my bourbon, into my chair. Silence again. Only this time, it wasn't mine. The silence sat between us like a loaded question. She didn't answer because there wasn't an answer. Not one that didn't burn the last bridge she had left. She walked over to the window and stared out like it held some secret exit, some trapdoor into a version of her life where I never came home early. You think this is the worst thing I've done? She said finally, voice low. You think this is the first? And there it was.
No stumble. No regret.
Just pure, distilled defiance. I stood up slowly, feeling the world tilt ever so slightly beneath my feet. What does that mean? She turned to me, lips tight, like she'd already made peace with the chaos she was about to unleash. It means you haven't been paying attention. I stopped being your wife years ago. You were too busy playing the martyr to notice. Every word was a match against dry wood. I didn't even need to speak. She was lighting the fire herself. How many? I asked. How many others? She shrugged. More than one. Less than 10. Does it matter? It shouldn't have mattered. Not now. Not after everything I'd already seen. But it did. Because each one of those unnamed ghosts was another day she smiled in my face while writing me out of her life. Another lie. Another betrayal layered on top of the last. You're proud of this? I asked, stunned by her calm. You think this makes you strong? I think it makes me honest, she said. Finally. No, it made her empty. I walked toward the mantel, picked up the photo from our trip to Mendocino. The one where we stood by the cliffs, wind in her hair, that fake perfect grin on her face. I stared at it. Not the image, but the memory behind it. The way she held my hand that day. The way she leaned into me like she couldn't imagine anyone else. That was the real betrayal. Not the bodies. Not the secrets. The fact that she made me believe. I could have forgiven you, I said without turning around. If you had just told the truth. You say that now, she said. But you would have hated me anyway. You hate that I took control. Control. I turned, the photo still in my hand. You call this control? Lying, sneaking, hiding? That's not power. That's cowardice dressed up in lipstick and excuses. She laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. You're not angry because I lied, she said. You're angry because I stopped needing you. There it was. The core of it. The line she had waited the entire night to throw. And it almost worked. Almost. I don't care that you don't need me, I said quietly. I care that you wasted my time. I care that you spat on everything we built just to feel wanted by men who don't even know your middle name. She didn't reply. Her face twitched for a second. Something between fury and fear, and then she turned back to the window. I placed the photo face down on the coffee table and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She asked without looking. To the lawyer, I said. I'm done trying to find the old you. She's dead. And whatever's standing in her place, it doesn't scare me anymore. I opened the door, stepped outside into the night air, and shut it behind me. Not with rage. With finality. I didn't drive. I walked, past the familiar turns of our neighborhood where kids used to sell lemonade in summer, past the Wilsons' overdecorated lawn, and the crack in the sidewalk I tripped on the day we moved in. Each step felt like a quiet erasure of the life we had drawn in chalk, washed away by one bitter storm we both let build in silence. The night was heavy. Tulsa nights always are in spring, thick with that tension before the rain. I welcomed it, needed it, because there's a certain kind of clarity that only comes when your whole world breaks open and you're left standing in the eye of it, no longer asking how, but now asking what next. I walked until I reached the one place she hated, my father's garage. A dimly lit, grease-stained sanctuary of real talk and no filters. My dad had passed 3 years back, but I still kept the place. Not for him. For me. A reminder that roots weren't always in people. Sometimes they were in the work, in the grind, in the parts of life that didn't need love to function. I unlocked the side door and stepped into the familiar scent of oil and thyme. My old toolbox sat where I'd left it. I pulled it open, not to fix anything, but to remember who I was before I let her rewrite me into a placeholder. My phone buzzed. I checked it, expecting silence. But there she was. 4 messages from Brittany. You're overreacting. We can talk about this. I didn't plan for it to go that far. You can't just walk away. That's not fair. Fair. That word spun in my head like a loose tire. Fair would have been a conversation before she let someone else press his hands where only mine were promised. Fair would have been fighting for what was breaking, not escaping into someone else's arms and calling it clarity. I typed one word back. Lawyer. I didn't send it. Not yet. I just stared at it, thumb hovering, letting the gravity of it settle. This wasn't just about leaving. It was about unwriting everything. The mortgage, the holidays, the inside jokes, the long Sundays doing nothing and loving it. But here's the thing, pain makes decisions for you when logic can't. And that night, I didn't need logic. I had a truth she couldn't hide anymore. I left the garage just as the rain began to fall. Not a storm, just a slow, cold reminder from the sky that everything washes away eventually. Even loyalty, even love, even lies. I got in my truck and drove, not home, not back to her, but to my brother's. I hadn't talked to him in months. Our lives pulled in different directions, one of those silent sibling drifts that time justifies. But when he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't ask. Just stepped aside and let me in. "You hungry?" he asked. I nodded. And that was that. No analysis. No therapy session. Just a warm kitchen, an old couch, and silence that felt like breathing again. Later that night, as I lay awake staring at a ceiling I didn't recognize, I realized something. She didn't break me. She just reminded me I had stopped building. I didn't sleep much that night. The couch was too short, the room too quiet, and my mind too loud. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Not the version from years ago, not even the one I left standing in the living room. No, I saw the version that had existed all along and only now showed her real face. My brother, Mark, had left out a blanket and a note. "Coffee's on at 7. Simple. No questions." He never liked her, not really. Said she always smiled like she was auditioning for something. I used to think he just didn't get her. Now I knew he got her too well. By morning, I'd made the decision. I wasn't going to let her narrative be the one that defined the ending. She could twist truths, reframe blame, make herself a victim to anyone who'd listen. But not in court. Not on paper. That was where facts lived, not feelings. I called the lawyer the second his office opened. His assistant recognized my voice before I gave my name. That stung more than I thought it would. "We've had a few inquiries from your wife," she said gently. "She's looking for options." Of course she was. "She can look all she wants," I said. "But I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to end it." There was paperwork. A lot of it. And terms. And strategies. Things you don't think about when you're standing at the altar promising forever. Like who gets the house, who gets the debt, who gets the dog. I didn't want the house. Every wall whispered her name. I didn't want the car. She could have the damn thing. I only wanted one thing. The truth laid bare in legal ink. That night she called. No text. A real call. That was rare. I let it ring once. Twice. Picked it up. "Jason," she said, voice soft. Like we were back in that cabin in Tahoe, when the world still made sense. "I'm not coming back," I said before she could start weaving her next line. "I know. I wanted to talk. Without lawyers. There's nothing left to talk about." She was quiet. Then, "I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't care if you did." Another pause. Then came the line I didn't expect. "It wasn't about them. It was about me. I was drowning in a life I didn't recognize. I needed out." "Then why didn't you walk?" I snapped. "Why burn the whole thing down with me still inside it?" And that's when she said something so twisted, so brutally honest, it made my stomach turn. "Because if I walked, I'd be the bad guy. But if you left, I'd be the one abandoned." I could still play the sympathy card. There it was. Well, true. "You wanted me to catch you," I whispered. "I needed you too," she admitted. "But not like that." I hung up. I didn't slam the phone. I didn't scream. I just put it down and stared out the window of my brother's guest room, where the streetlights flickered against the rain-washed road. She'd built a trap not to keep me, but to justify letting me go. And I'd walked right into it, thinking I was saving something. But now, finally, I was free. Freedom's a strange thing. It doesn't hit you like a door swinging open. It's quieter, like air returning to a room that's been sealed for too long. I felt it the next morning, not in a grand revelation, but in the absence of her voice, her perfume, her shadow. Mark's guest room had a small window that looked out over a park. Kids were already out, kicking a ball, laughing like the world had no weight. I watched them for longer than I should have. Jealous, maybe, or nostalgic for a time when I didn't know how complicated people could be. By noon, the papers were ready. My lawyer had sent over a preliminary draft, asset division, spousal agreements, the cold, clinical autopsy of a marriage. I stared at it, each clause a scalpel. This wasn't just ink. This was the burial of a life built on something that had long since rotted. And then my phone buzzed again. Another message from Brittany. "Let's just talk once. Please."
No lawyers. No yelling.
She wasn't giving up. Not because she loved me, I knew better now, but because she hated not being in control. So I agreed. One meeting. Neutral ground. Somewhere public. Somewhere she couldn't rewrite the story halfway through. We met at a cafe we used to visit when we were still pretending to be happy. I chose it for that reason, so she'd feel the weight of what she'd broken. She showed up late, sunglasses on, like she was the one who needed hiding. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting across from me like we were business partners. "I won't drag this out," I said. "Say what you came to say." She took off her glasses slowly. Her eyes weren't red.
No tears.
Just calculation. "I don't want to be the villain here. You are," I said flatly. "You just want the narrative cleaned up. That's not fair. Stop. Just stop. You don't get to use that word anymore." People around us kept eating, sipping coffee, typing on laptops like nothing world-shattering was happening 2 feet from them. That's what betrayal feels like. The world keeps spinning while yours has been turned inside out. "I made mistakes," she said, voice low. "But you made it easy. You stopped trying years ago." I leaned in, and instead of talking to me, you turned our life into a game. You invited strangers into our home, into our bed, and laughed while they tore it apart. Her jaw clenched. "You're making it sound worse than it was." "No," I said. "You did. I'm just not sugarcoating it for you." She leaned back, frustrated, like she thought this would go differently, like she imagined I'd be wounded and begging, or angry and shouting. Anything but this steady, cold clarity. "I just don't want us to hate each other," she tried one last time. I stared at her for a long moment. "I don't hate you," I said finally. "I don't feel anything for you, and that's what should scare you." I stood up, placed a 10 on the table for the coffee I didn't touch, and walked away. She didn't follow. She didn't call after me, and I didn't look back. Not because it was easy, because it was final. The next few days were a strange kind of quiet, not peaceful but dense. Like the world was catching its breath around me. No texts from Brittany, no surprise calls. Just silence, her favorite weapon turned useless now that it no longer unsettled me. Mark noticed the shift. We didn't talk much about it. He'd hand me a coffee in the morning, toss me a beer at night, and let me rebuild in the small things. Fixing his busted cabinet door, rewiring a porch light. Felt good, doing something that stayed fixed. On the third morning, the silence broke. But not from her. Came from someone else. A man. He showed up at the plant where I work. Said his name was Dale. Older. Wore a suit like it was trying too hard to matter. "You're Jason, right?" he asked, stepping into the yard like he belonged there. "Who's asking?" He hesitated. Then, "Brittany's lawyer." I laughed. I actually laughed. "She sent you here?" "She's requesting mediation. Says she wants to avoid making this messy." "Too late," I said. "It got messy the second she started auditioning boyfriends in our living room." He blinked at that, caught off guard. Clearly, he'd been fed a different version. "She's concerned about her image," he said. "I'm concerned about my bourbon. She owes me a bottle." He didn't smile. I didn't expect him to. This was a man paid to deliver lines, not feel them. "She's also requesting the house," he added. "Full rights." That stopped me cold. "She wants the house? It's in both your names, but she claims emotional significance." I stepped in close, just enough for him to feel the difference between paper and principle. "You tell her the house is a mausoleum. She can keep the memories. I'm burning the rest down metaphorically and legally." He left quickly after that, probably regretting ever stepping onto my turf. That night, Brittany broke the silence again. "Why are you being like this? You said you didn't care about the house." "I care about the lies. You don't get the life and the exit music. You're trying to punish me."
No.
"I'm making sure the next guy she cheats on knows what it costs." I didn't send the last one. Just typed it. Deleted it. It wasn't for her. It was for me. Proof that I still had the line, and I wasn't about to cross it. 2 days later, she showed up at Mark's. No warning. No call. Just pulled up in that sleek little car I paid half of and knocked like it was still hers to enter. Mark answered. He didn't invite her in. "Is he here?" she asked. "Doesn't matter," he said. "He doesn't want to see you. I just need 5 minutes. You had 12 years. She stood there for a second, stunned. She never liked Mark. Said he was too blunt. That day he was perfect. She left without saying another word. And as I watched from the upstairs window, something shifted in me. Not triumph. Not satisfaction. Just certainty. This was over. And for the first time, really the first time, I could see what was ahead. Not her. Not us. Just me. 3.2 weeks passed. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough time for the dust to stop pretending it had somewhere to land. I started packing what little I still had at the house. Mostly tools, a few books, and a box of photographs that I knew I'd never open but couldn't yet throw away. I didn't tell her I was coming. I didn't ask if she'd be there. I walked through the door like I still had the right because technically I did. She was home, standing in the kitchen, barefoot, no makeup, hair tied up in that casual, careless way she used to do when she wasn't trying to sell an image. She looked up like she was expecting someone else. Maybe she was. "You're not supposed to just show up," she said quietly. "It's still my name on the deed," I said, not stopping. She watched me move through the living room, packing. No small talk.
No requests.
Just cardboard and silence. "You're really going through with this?" she asked after a long pause. "You thought I wouldn't?" "I thought," she trailed off. "I thought you'd come around." I turned, slowly. "Come around to what, Brittany? To forgiving you for turning our marriage into a prop for your boredom? For humiliating me in my own house?" Her eyes flickered, something between shame and stubbornness. "It wasn't boredom. It was survival. Don't sell me poetry. You survived just fine when I was working doubles to pay off your debts." She didn't reply. Instead, she walked over to the counter and picked up a folder. "This came for you. From the lawyer." I took it without touching her. Opened it. Inside was a counterproposal, new terms. Slightly fairer. Slightly less hostile. Still soaked in strategy. "This your idea or his?" I asked. "Mine," she said. "I realized I don't want to fight." "You don't want to lose," I corrected. "Is that how you see me now?" she whispered. I looked at her. Hard.
No.
"That's how I finally see you." It landed. I watched her shoulders drop. Not from pain, but from the weight of a mask she no longer had to wear. "I never meant for it to end like this," she said, voice barely above breath. "You ended it long before it actually ended. I'm just the one drawing the line." She nodded, and for the first time in a long time she didn't argue. Didn't twist it into my fault. She just nodded. I packed the last box and headed for the door. As I reached it, she called out once more. "Jason." I stopped. Didn't turn. If you ever wonder if I cared, I did. I just didn't know how to keep it real. I stepped outside. I don't wonder anymore. And I walked to my truck with the last of my life from that house. Not lighter. Not happier. Just clear. Because when you take off the blindfold of love, you don't find darkness. You find answers. The new place wasn't much. A one-bedroom above an old barbershop, creaky floors, windows that howled when the wind got serious. But it was mine. No perfume in the air. No tension woven into the walls. No memories of laughter that turned bitter. Just me. A mattress on the floor. A beat-up couch Mark helped carry up 3 flights of stairs. And silence, not the kind that accused you. The kind that healed. The divorce moved quickly after that. She didn't contest. Not really. A few emails back and forth. A phone call where her voice cracked but didn't break. And the final signatures. No courtroom drama. No dramatic last-minute speeches. Just a quiet thud as the papers were stamped and filed. 12 years closed in 12 pages. Mark and I toasted that night. Cheap whiskey, not the good stuff. The good stuff stayed behind, one last casualty in a war of pride. "You're not the same," he said, watching me across the small balcony.
No. No.
"You're lighter. Divorce will do that to a man." He shook his head. "Nah, not the divorce. The truth. You finally let it in." He wasn't wrong. For years, I'd held onto a version of her that never existed. The one I met at the concert, the one who kissed me in the rain, who danced barefoot in the kitchen. But that version, she was an idea, not a person. And loving an idea is like trying to hold fog. It slips through no matter how tight you grip. One night, 2 weeks after it was final, she called again. I stared at the screen, watched it ring, let it go to voicemail. Her message was short. "I saw your name on the filing. You didn't even put a note. Just irreconcilable. I guess that's fair. I guess that's how it ends. I hope you find what you're looking for, Jason. I really do." I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of mercy. For her, for me, for everything we used to be and never really were. The real twist in all this? I didn't feel broken. I felt rebuilt. Every time someone asked, "What happened?" I didn't dodge it. I told them, blunt, raw, unembellished. She got bored. She lied. She found validation in strangers. I walked. Some nodded. Some winced. Some offered advice I didn't need. But none of it mattered, because the truth had done its work. And in that truth, I found something unexpected. Peace. They say healing isn't linear, and they're right. Some mornings I still wake up expecting to hear her in the kitchen. The echo of a memory pretending it's still real. But it passes quicker now. Just a flicker of what used to be, fading with the sound of a car driving by or the kettle starting to whistle. I kept the ring, not as a token, as a reminder. It sits in a drawer next to my toolbox, the one I brought with me when I left. The ring isn't shiny anymore. It's scuffed, dulled by years of friction, like the marriage itself. It's not bitterness that keeps it there. It's truth. A reminder that love without honesty isn't love. It's illusion. I ran into her once. Grocery store, middle of a random Tuesday. She looked surprised, caught between the frozen peas and orange juice like a deer in headlights. She smiled, small, uncertain. I nodded, kept walking. She didn't follow. She knew better now. Later that night, Mark and I had dinner. He grilled. I brought beer. We didn't talk about her. We talked about work, about football, about a trip we might take. Somewhere with no past, just air and sky. You regret any of it? He asked me. No, I said. Not even the worst days. Because they taught me what not to settle for. And that's the heart of it, isn't it? We spend so much time trying to salvage people who don't want saving, building scaffolding around a relationship that already collapsed. I did that for years. Patch jobs and denial. Tools used on the wrong things. But now I fix what can be fixed. And I walk away from what can't. That night, I went home and opened the last box I hadn't touched. Photos, letters, a journal she once kept. I read one entry about our first anniversary. How she loved me. How she felt lucky. I believed her then. I don't believe it now. But I don't hate her for it. She loved me the way she knew how. With conditions. With exit plans. With stories she told herself louder than she ever told me. I loved her the way I was taught. With loyalty. With hope. With a belief that good intentions would be enough. They weren't. And that's okay. Because now, when I hear laughter in my home, it's mine. When I drink bourbon, it's my glass. My hand. My piece. So here's what I've learned. For any man standing where I once stood, don't ignore the signs. Don't excuse the gut feeling. Don't let charm overwrite character. And when someone shows you who they are, the real them, not the version you fell for, believe it. And remember, they thought I was harmless, just a man with tools. But I don't fix cars. I fix mistakes. And I fix too. Permanently.